We're recording.
We're recording.
All right, so I am Francine Engel, and I am a judge from Maryland. I am a political scientist, and I focus on American constitutional development, and I work with the Maryland Council for Civic and History Education.
Hello, happy Saturday to you all. My name is Jocelyn Broman. I work in Congress. I work for Representative Don Young of Alaska. I've been up there for about 5 years. Previously, I was in law school, and even before that, I was I participated in the We the People program back in 2006. We got to compete at nationals, my team. So I'm very excited to be back and to do this again. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to your statement.
Good afternoon. My name is Evan Gessner. I'm a civil rights attorney down in Lexington, South Carolina. It's my first year judging the national competition, though I've been involved with the state competition here for about 12 years or so. So I'm excited to be here and looking forward to your presentation.
All right, could you introduce yourselves, please?
I am Samantha Carley.
I am Max Brager.
I'm Sydney Dwyer, and we're representing Unit 3 of Robert C. Byrd's AP Government class under Mr. Phillips.
Excellent. Okay, so I will go ahead and read the question for you, although I know you know what it is. So this is a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. Quote, "I do not think the United States would come to an end if we lost our power to declare an act of Congress void. I do think the Union would be imperiled if we could not make that declaration as to the laws of the several states." Unquote. What impact has judicial review had on federalism? Is judicial review a counter-majoritarian practice? Please support your position. And what limits, if any, would you place on the practice of judicial review? You may begin.
Judicial review has become the very essence of the American law and order system. America has a system where the Constitution is the prime example of federalism. In this document that rules our country, judicial review is used to keep checks and balances among the branches. With the complex system of a larger government securing the rights of other smaller governments, the three branches were never created with intentions to rule, but to help guide. In the beginning of America becoming a country, the court case Marbury versus Madison set in motion judicial review. William Marbury and James Madison brought before John Marshall an issue of Marbury Station, and as a judge, Marshall chose the Constitution and ruled with neither man. In this case, the concept of judicial review was established, saying the Supreme Court has the power to declare a law unconstitutional. This is a great power for a branch that was believed by many at the founding of the nation to be the weakest. The Constitution says the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution. With this case, a power was added and expressed by the judicial branch, and the country would be swayed to let the Constitution lead the judicial branch in all of its hearings.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
The judicial branch from its conception was designed to protect, above all others, the minority. In Federalist Number 10, James Madison voiced his opinion on the danger of factions, the minority. He persuaded his audience to consider the danger factions are capable of, setting up the issue and then later using it to justify his claim. The large republic would be the best system of government for the newly freed states. This ties into many of the complaints within the Declaration of Independence on unfair legislature, including he, King George III, has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Thus, judicial review is a tool by which the judicial branch has possession in order to protect the minority. Having 9 justices on a Supreme Court, a decision can be made that not only reflects the Constitution, but can be separate from the majority that Congress represents. The question still stands, though, is it a counter-majoritarian practice? This can be answered with another question. Does judicial review have the power to take into consideration the majority's point of view? With the rules that the judicial branch is confined to, it can only represent the interpretation of the Constitution. The Supreme Court's judicial review is limited by nature to represent the Constitution through the voices of 9 justices. Such instances as Roe versus Wade, when these 9 justices overturned a ruling of an entire legislative body declaring a woman's right to their body, In this way, it cannot be a majoritarian practice and must be a counter-majoritarian practice.
Judicial review is necessary to keep the other branches of government in check. If our legislative branch creates an unconstitutional law, the Supreme Court can overturn that law, thus keeping the other branch in check. This happened for the first time in the case Marbury versus Madison, and this is when judicial review was established. Our Constitution created a system of checks and balances, and judicial review helps uphold the system. This is why it should have very few limits placed on it, if any. Our Supreme Court justices are appointed and confirmed by the other two branches of government, and they go through a lengthy process to gain their position on the court. Each of them has decades of experience in law and the necessary skills to do their job as a justice, which is to interpret the Constitution and apply it to law. They're qualified to do their job, and they have each taken an oath which states, "I will administer justice without respect to persons and do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me." They've all sworn to uphold the Constitution, so we should trust that our justices will do their job properly and stay true to the word of the Constitution.
All right. Okay, so we can start asking some questions then. Thank you very much. So you were talking about towards the end here, the confirmation process of the Supreme Court justices. You mentioned that. Do you think there should be any changes to the way that judges are nominated, or any changes to the judicial confirmation process, or does the system work well?
As it stands, the system works with the party. So really it is from a different perspective what you believe is a good judge. Are you conservative or more of a progressive sort of ideology follower? So really the system as it stands right now is almost the best it can be based on these many different viewpoints of what makes the perfect Supreme Justice judge.
Yeah, and to go off what Max said, this last year we just watched a new justice get voted in, and there was a lot of debate about whether or not people thought she was qualified. And I think it is important that we realize that justices get voted in not by citizens; they get voted in by like the president. They get picked by them, and I think that's important because if that's part of their motive isn't about getting reelected. It's not something that's on their mind when they're picking or ruling on cases.
Yeah, it's part of their job, and the whole system of, because they are put through like severe trials in order to ensure that their vote is not only as unbiased as a human can be, but that they are upholding the Constitution and they know the law in order to properly deal with the scenarios that are put in front of them.
So how much, sorry, Francine.
The process has become too political?
I would say that there is definitely a contrast, like we've seen with Amy Coney Barrett, how she is a Republican, and it seemed that only Republicans wanted her to be appointed. And so there was a lot of support from the Republicans, but not very much from the Democrats. And I feel to be a judge, you have to put that aside, but that is not what we're doing in the current political climate. Sydney, would you like to add on to that?
I agree with you, Max. I think that the process itself is very political, and our views about certain justices can be very political, but their job itself is not political at all. Their job is to be unbiased and to interpret the Constitution and what it says, not to make policy. You know what I mean? Their job isn't to be political. It's actually the opposite.
So we do have, but most of these justices that are being picked now, whether it was by President Obama, President Trump, or President Biden in the future, possibly, they're all picked based upon their theory on how to interpret the Constitution. A lot of it is in regards to that. So how should we be worried about how different constitutional interpretations would affect judicial review?
See, That's an interesting question, because to have a whole Supreme Court focused on only one ideology limits the viewpoint and what their decisions can be. So in our whole government, large republic, is about giving the minority a voice. And you can't really do that with only 9, justices. So as it has to be as diverse as possible, including ideologies, to make a full circle decision on what is the best for every US citizen that they are representing.
How do you define that diversity?
How you define the diversity is, you can look at the ideologies, you could look at the backgrounds of the justices, and it does come down to policy. You can have different diversity within like policy, and conservative or progressive. So there are very many different types of justices that can have diversity while also maintaining the as unbiased as possible viewpoint and interpreting the Constitution. If the Constitution was interpreted in a single exact way, then we wouldn't need a whole political or a whole justice system. But because there's so many different needs for like precedents, that is why we have the Supreme Court.
Okay. So, and I didn't know this until I got my judging questions here. Apparently, Senator Ted Cruz wrote in his book, One Vote Away, he said that a single Supreme Court seat can change history. Do you agree with that? Why or why not?
There are 9 justices, so I would agree that one vote can sway the difference between a precedent being sent or precedent being enacted and a ruling being upheld. So it is very interesting how one vote can literally change how a whole system sees a specific issue.
I agree with Max, because we do only have 9 justices. So say 5 were to vote yes on their whatever case they're doing or whatever precedent they're setting, that could mean a big difference than 4 of them saying yes and 5 of them saying no. Since we have so little, it's so easy for it to be such a close call between the justices.
I agree with both my classmates, and that can be a scary thing, that one person can decide whether or not something major is enacted. But we like to vote in our country.
So would you recommend term limits for Supreme Court justices?
I would not, because within the Constitution, it is explicitly stated that they shouldn't have term limits, because that would mean that they'd have to, it would work like Congress. They'd have to worry about being reelected, and that throws the whole justice system into question if you're worrying about what you're being judged upon will determine if you remain in that position.
Well, what
So
if
it is,
I agree.
you weren't reelected, but you just had a set term, like, no more than 20 years?
that would be interesting, because that would mean that there would be a new cycle of judges at least every 20 years. But I still feel that there are like certain limitations, like justices will be sorry, I was just going to say the justices can be suspended under bad behavior, as is outlined. But no, 20 years is an interesting question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right. Let's all recognize the students for their hard work and participation today. Great job. And now we'll have some judge feedback.
Yeah, I thought you did a fabulous job. And I know trying to do this over Zoom is not the easiest thing, but I really like how you tried to work together over Zoom, and like you saw that Sydney was trying to get in there, and so you're like, Sydney, would you like to add on to that? Which was really nice, because you said, okay, we're giving her some space to say what she wants to say, because I know it's hard on Zoom. So I thought you worked really well together under very difficult circumstances here. And you covered a lot of great information here. I liked your statement, how you talked about the judiciary designed to protect the minorities, and also how you brought up Federalist number 10. And you just covered a lot of great information here, and I thought you did a nice job with the follow-up questions that we gave you. And I'm just really happy that I got to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, it was a great presentation, and you guys did a great job with our questions as well. When I asked the question about diversity, there's a lot of different ways to measure it. And so I always like to ask where it looks from, because one of my pet peeves about the Supreme Court is that they're basically all from Ivy League law schools. Like, that's not diversity. They're all teaching the same thing. So I would love to see judges up there that are from non-Ivy League law schools. But if you look at it from like a socioeconomic background, like you have a wide diversity of people from very different backgrounds on the Supreme Court right now. The other interesting thing about diversity on the Supreme Court is that most of them are Jewish or Catholic. And there's only one Protestant on the Supreme Court, which is Justice Gorsuch. And so that's another aspect of diversity that we don't always think about when it comes to interpretation. So it's just very interesting to hear that diversity question comes up. And then also, like, this is just my little thing that I like to plug every once in a while. So great job answering questions. And I really appreciated how you guys were thinking through it and talking through it. You could tell that you were reasoning and thinking about the questions that we were asking, and not only just like blurting something out, but you were being thoughtful about it. So I appreciated that. One thing I would suggest in the future as a few more examples to kind of help support your statement. So you want your opinion and you want your statement of fact, but then also that support is only going to help to build that argument and just make it better. So I also appreciated talking about the minority and bringing that Federalist 10 example in your statement. It kind of helps to understand. I'm not sure a faction is always going to be a minority. I'll just put that in there, but that's like a little nitty picky thing. But it's good to remember that there's that minority protection there. So overall, a wonderful job. And so it was really fun to listen and talk with you guys. Thank you.
Everyone, great job. You really did good work here. I could tell you all put in a lot of time and effort into this. It shows when you do the presentation. I've been doing this on the state level for a number of years, and always like to hear something I hadn't thought of. It's kind of amazing how every year, as long as I've been doing this, I still hear things that strike me every time. So good job. I think it was Sydney, you had mentioned at one point that the job of a Supreme Court justice, the job itself is not political, but I think as you were commenting, the appointment process sure is. And that's one thing I've noticed, that going through the appointment and the confirmation process is all politics, but you tend to see once they're in, it sort of settles down and it's business as usual to a large extent. And really, as I see it, when you talk about politics or maybe some partisanship on the courts, you tend to see it in one vein, and that's your more conservative minded people tend to take a more strict construction when they're interpreting things and looking up. That's what it says. That's what we've got to do. Or they'll talk about the framers' intent. Whereas people more on the liberal side of things will say, well, what does this mean today? What should we be doing now? And wanting to expand things a little more. But again, great presentation, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Great job, everyone.
Thanks, guys.